been caught about 50 times.
Hey everybody, Jordan Weeks from Biological Anchor Productions here in 2023 with a new Whiteboard Muskies video. So it's been a while, I apologize, I've been busy, my daughter's playing hockey and it takes up a ton of my time. I don't have much time to do some of these videos. But I am going to start off a new one this year and do a few more. Got lots of footage, I got more footage than I know what to do with. Not sure I'm going to be able to fit it all in this winter or this spring yet, so maybe there'll be some coming out in summer if I have time. Appreciate you all watching, appreciate your comments, appreciate all the support. This Whiteboard Muskie video is going to be a little bit different from the rest of them. Normally I talk about a particular fish catch and explain that. This one I'm going to look at a little differently. I'm going to provide you guys with some information that can help you if you're going to a new lake or a lake for the first time. If you're looking for your own Lake X. So there aren't a lot of secrets in the muskie world. Most of the secret muskie lakes, or quote-unquote secret muskie lakes, people know about, they've talked about. The internet has ruined a lot of that. But there are some, diamonds in the rough out there if you know where to look. So what this video is going to do is it's going to explain to you the process that I take when I go to a lake I've never been before. Or if I was interested in learning more about a lake I was considering fishing, or one that I may have a outing on, a club outing, or a tournament, or something like that. So this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to break down what I would do to look into that water body, and I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on how I do it from the comfort of your own home, and then talk about what I would do on the water. So I hope you like it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is talk about doing so in Wisconsin. My next one will be talking about how to do it in Minnesota, but this one, let's focus on Wisconsin. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources main webpage off Google. And I'm going to click on Wisconsin DNR. Now, you can go to the fishing tab. And it talks about down here at the bottom, find places to fish. Click on that. You can scroll down. There's a whole bunch of different things, but we're interested in muskie fishing. So you go Muskie Lakes by Rivers and County. Here's a beautiful picture of a big muskie that Greg Maskey, biologist in Forest and Florence County, is holding. So I assume that's from one of those waters. You can go to our muskie water book, which is right here. This hasn't been revised in a while. I think it's revised in, let me see, 18 maybe? Yep, 2018. It tells you about all different counties, tells you about biology on muskies, reproduction, gives you some growth information, talks about diseases. Johnny Aschenbrenner, Larry Slagowski talks about stocking. There's Lori Simonson, and then talks about the numbers of lakes by classification per county. There's a lot of information in here. Pretty good reading. But let's go to Sawyer County. I don't fish a lot in Sawyer County. So I'm going to scroll down here till we get there, and we'll pick a lake. Let's pick Sisabagama right here. I've never fished on Sis. I don't spend much time in Sawyer County fishing because my folks live an hour and a half south of there. And when I get to my folks, I usually just fish around from the Eau Claire area. So I don't usually drive up another hour and a half to fish lakes where I don't have anywhere to stay. So let's just pick this lake and pretend like I'm going to go there for a weekend or a vacation or a tournament or whatever you might want to go there for. So there's a few things you can glean off of this. First thing is the nearest town is Stone Lake. Location nearest municipality is Stone Lake. It does have a boat ramp. It's 720 acres-ish, classified as A2, which is action fishery. So tends to have a few more fish per acre than our trophy waters. And it has a reproductive category of 2, which is it's stocked, but also has possibility of some natural reproduction. So that's what this booklet will tell you. So what I'm going to do with that information is I'm going to copy the lake name. I right-clicked and copied it. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going up to the skirt search tool, this little magnifying glass thing here, and I'm going to paste it in there. Right click again, paste it in, and I'm going to search for that lake. Here's the link right here at top, Sisabagama. It's highlighted because I practiced this before. Click on that and it gives you a bunch of information about the lake. Now, there appears to be a discrepancy here. This says 805 acres. The other one said 719. Either way, a good sized lake has the potential, because of the size, for a few more large fish. Fish ultimate length can be explained by lake size with 70% of the variation. So that helps. Tells you about the boat landing. You can click on that. Talks about where it is, access off Halfway Lake. You can actually see it on a Google map if you'd like. Talks about the fish species present. Talks about local board ordinances, consumption advisories, and you can go to the DNR fishing regulations. And then there's a bathymetric map. Okay, this is on the front page. There's also a map here. This is a Google map. It just shows the outline of the lake. Talks about some other details about the lake and then more. Okay, so if you go to the map, it looks like this. Zooms you right into the lake. You can kind of see where the boat landing is in relation to the water body. Okay, you can go to facts and figures. Talks about any invasives that we're seeing there. Looks like there's mystery snail, oh boy, and milfoil. So that tells me there's going to be a good vegetation bite in there. Milfoil, muskies love milfoil. So let's see. The other best part about this is DNR contacts for Sisabagama Lake, and I want you to keep this in your back pocket. So if you click on this link, you should get to fisheries biologist by county. Now, I'm not sure, they got all these other folks listed here. I'm not sure why Max isn't listed, but if you click on that, unfortunately, you got to scroll down till you get to Sawyer. I went too far. Max Walter, you can click on his name, and his contact information is right here. Here's his phone number. His email is up here. Talks about his areas of expertise here and where they are. Gives you his address, and a supervisor, and then the secretary's director, right? So keep this number and this email available to yourself. You might want to write it down, copy and paste it somewhere, open an email to him, because he's going to be an invaluable source of information in a bit. So I'm going to go back, get back out of here. So here we're back at the Sisabagama Lake page. I'm going to go back to the overview. And this stuff you should just like experiment with and look at, see what you can learn from that map. So I'm going to go to this bathymetric map. That's the contour map. So this map is the DNR map that most of the other mapping companies have based their maps off of. Some of the companies now are making their own maps, which tend to be much more accurate. But some companies are still using the old DNR map, which, despite the fact that it was made in 1963, down here, as you can see here, 1963, is still probably fairly accurate. So this is the first place that I can start, or second, depending. You can either look at your map or call Max. Max would be a really good resource. Call Max, email Max, and just say, I'm interested in muskie fishing on Lake Sisabagama. Could you tell me about the watercolor, the clarity, the habitat types, and any other items that you think could be valuable for a muskie excursion on that lake? And most likely you're going to get a response in a relatively short amount of time from Max that gives you answers to some of those questions, and then obviously follow up with anything else you might be interested in. Okay, so let's pretend we've done that and we're waiting for Max's response. If you've muskie fished for any amount of time, you know that muskies like to inhabit the largest structural items in a water body. They tend to The biggest, best structure is going to have the most fish and most likely the largest fish. So when you look at this lake map from this is the north end to the south end, you can see that it varies. It's got a nice shoreline with a lot of coves and points and a lot of habitat to check out. So this is not going to be a boring lake to fish. It's got a lot of structural items, which is kind of nice. Um, so the boat landing is located off of this little trail here. It's in this area right here. So when you come out of the boat landing, obviously you want to watch out for this little shallow spot, but it might be worth a look to see, especially if the water's clear, to see what the habitat is on that spot and just make note of it. But drive out and start looking at the largest structural item. And to me, a couple things stand out. In the middle of the lake, there's several points and island areas that have large shelves next to them, areas that probably are going to hold a muskie, so they're worth your time to start out with. Okay, and then you can move on and plan the rest of your day or weekend from there. Okay, me in the summertime, I like stuff that I can fish relatively quickly, and it doesn't look too complex, just to get a feel for the water, right? So the first thing I would fish would be this long point, saddle, and island complex. I'd start somewhere back here, possibly if there's a big patch of vegetation right here, and then this is just it says BR, that must be boulder. Bedrock. Oh gosh. So we got a rock. This is a big rocky saddle. So we have vegetation back here. I'd probably start here on this patch of vegetation and I'd fish fast down this edge, depending on habitat. It looks like it might be rock. So there's probably no vegetation on here. It'd probably be pulled out a little deeper. Um, and you might be fishing some crankbaits on the rocky edge. Or obviously bucktails are always a good choice. So I'd have one fast and one riding high and one bait that's probably near the bottom somehow. So most likely in this scenario, personally, I would run first person front of the boat would be a bucktail, whatever your favorite bucktail is, and then the second person would be probably throwing some sort of crankbait or minnow bait that gets down quite a bit deeper and maybe can contact some structure, whatever your favorite one of those is. I have my favorites. Um, Probably not going to worry about talking about those today, but for a future video, I might talk about some of that stuff. So I'd work through this fairly fast and around. I wouldn't for sure not miss this little 3-footer here and around there. Check out what this 5-footer is. If it's all rock, then you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If you haven't seen anything there and this has been all rock structure, which is what it looks like from the map, I would then try a different type of structure. I would try a main lake structure with potential with weeds on it. Look for some vegetation. Now, if there's not a lot of vegetation in the lake, it might be hard to find, but it looks like this point might be rocky. It says sand, SD is sand. And then this area is also said bedrock. So this also looks like a rocky area. These structures look fantastic for, say, smallmouth, but they could be holding muskies as well. Now, I did notice right here that there's a sunken island that has some vegetation on it. These T's connotate vegetation, so the submerged vegetation, it says on this structure. So that might be worth a check real quick. Um, Other than that, I can see up here on the north side of the lake, and especially if you have a south wind that's blowing up here, you see these patches of vegetation. There's both the upright T and the upside down T is submergent and emergent vegetation. You have it here and here. So I might go from this main lake point here to up and try this weed bed here, especially if they're in the wind, and then also this weed bed here. If the wind was from the north, I would start down here and fish this area from this weed bed here over this rocky point and down into this weed, because then the wind is blowing in here. Now, the reason I say that is because oftentimes fish that are most active will be faced into the wind and they'll be actively feeding in those wind blown areas. This area is really intriguing as well. If you find fish in these other weedy areas, you want to obviously look for places that are similar. So if you find fish here, if you have active fish, if you get a follow, if you catch a fish, you want to try to look for areas that are similar. So this area might be really good. It looks like it has weeds on the north side. On a north wind, that might be really good. It looks like it might have bedrock and vegetation. Hard to see, hard to know what this spot's going to look like until you get out there. But Based on your success or lack thereof of this, you might move to the next largest structural item on the lake, which to me is this huge complex off this point here. There's a large wooded island with shallow, looks like rocky area around it, but it also has a really interesting contour around there with a sunken island here that's 10 foot deep, and then a nice edge inside turn here, and then an underwater point out here. So these might be areas you'd potentially cast big rubber. You might want to throw Lake XB52 on there. You might want to throw crankbaits again. Bucktails are always a good option. And then if you are interested in trying open water, what you want to look for is these larger areas of open water. Now, this is a large area of open water. This is probably the lake's 800 acres. This is probably 300 acres of open water. So that's a lot. But if you want to see if there are any pelagic bait fish in this area, which might hang off of these deeper breaks, might be over this deepest hole, you could always troll through there. There's trolling is legal in every county in Wisconsin to a certain extent. You'd have to look at the specific regulations for Sawyer County to find out how many lines. I want to say it's one line per person with a maximum of 3 per boat in Sawyer currently. But we could check that back on the web page. But troll through here and look at your sonar. If you see bait fish congregations that are 10 foot or less, those fish are ripe for being caught. They're real easy. They're much easier to catch. Muskies that are hanging out by these bait schools are easier to catch if the bait is less than 10 feet deep. If it's 15 to 20 feet deep, it's much more difficult to capture those muskies. But it all depends on where the bait's located, and that's a little bit of extra. It's a much more difficult technique because you tend not to get the follows that you would when you're fishing structure. But I've done it enough to be confident in that, and if I find bait fish, I would fish that area, pretty hard, especially in the early morning, late evening, maybe even into dark. The south end of the lake looks kind of ordinary other than some of these vegetated areas. So again, if you found fish in vegetation, you might want to hit these areas. The one thing that I would say is if you do see fish or catch a fish on a particular spot, don't hesitate to go back through those spots at prime time, which is any weather change, any light change, or your classic moon times if you're into that sort of thing. So this lake is really interesting because it has so many structural items, and it seems to be one that would take you quite a while to learn where the fish are located on these items. It would be a fun one to fish because there is so much stuff, so much structure. But play off of your success. So if you see a fish, if you have a blow up, if you have a strike, fish areas that look like that, fish the largest structural items in the lake. Get your information from the fisheries biologist. Find out what the bait fish are in the lake. If it's primarily Cisco, or perch, or bluegill, or crappie, then you can target baits that look similar to those forage fish species and potentially increase your odds. If he tells you that there are massive numbers of suckers in this lake, you might want to fish with a bait that looks sort of like a sucker, maybe a white, maybe a brown. If he tells you there are massive smallmouth in here, you might want to use brown colors. If it's a really good walleye lake, you might want to, fish with walleye patterned lures. It's all the information is out there. It's all available, and it's relatively easy to get. You just have to make a little bit of an effort to contact the biologist, find out what they know, because they do know these water bodies. Then get out there, do a little map study, get on site, and then look with your eyes and your sonar to determine the largest structural items on the lake. Start there, go to other structural items that maybe aren't on those larger structural items. What I mean by that is if these are all rock in here, these big points, and this point is rock, and you fish those and you haven't seen any muskies, the next thing is you want to try some vegetation. So go find some vegetation, muck around in there, try the outside edges first and work your way in. what I mean by that is that if you don't have any success fishing the deeper weed edges, then you go in and try to fish some pockets or openings in weeds, any cuts, any depressions, any open areas within vegetation beds. Open water is also an option, and I would start out in this area. Not that there couldn't be open water fish in these basins, but with these shallower basins, the bait tends to be shallow, which is sometimes hard to see on your sonar screens. Most often, you'll see those on your side imaging because your boat may spook them as you drive through. This area down in the south end of the lake looks like there's a pretty good weed bed in a couple of areas, but other than that, it doesn't look anything super special. You might want to check these areas to see how deep the weed edges go. This could be a really nice spot if the vegetation goes up to, let's say, 15 feet. All that information needs to either be retrieved from the biologist with their information, or once you get to the lake. So hopefully this helps you learn how to use the DNR website to look at a new lake that you maybe haven't fished before. Another really great website that you could go to, and just to get another perspective on the lake map, is the Navionics website. So I'm going to type that in. I'm going to go to their website. Open that real quick. Bear with me. Here we go. So here on the viewers tab, there's a chart viewer. Now you don't have to have a subscription or anything to this website to use it. It has lake maps all over. So I'm going to click on the chart viewer. You don't have to have an account. It's just going to pop up a map, and you can go and look at the maps for the lakes. So you kind of have to know where you're going. Oh, there she is right there. So you can go and look at this map, which can give you better insight into what's on these spots. So the other thing I like to do as far as map study goes is use a Bing map. So I'm going to go to Bing Maps. Click on that, and it's going to bring up a map here. I'm going to change this on the upper right to hybrid, which gives us some labels. Zoom out to our water body. Go up to northern Wisconsin. Find Sisabagama, which is right here. And these maps can give you good insight into what the watercolor looks like. As you can see, this lake has got a green, at least bloom, as opposed to this one that's right next to us. Slim looks like it's much more of a clear water lake, at least at the same period in time. So Sisabagama is going to have some color to it, which gives you a clue into what type of baits to use. In fact, it's not a super clear water lake. It might be clear at some times of the year, but it clearly isn't in the summer, at least when this picture was taken. So you can fish this lake potentially on more of those sunny, high sky days. Obviously, it would still be good on cloudy days, but maybe it's a lake you go to because it does have some color, as opposed to a crystal clear, gin clear water body on a really sunny, flat, calm day. The other thing you can look at is if you zoom into a particular piece of structure, you can actually see structural items on there. So when we look at this little island, you can easily see that there's some deep water between the island and this shallow bar right here. And there's vegetation growing on this end of it, as well as a little small patch of vegetation here. And it looks like this might be a hard bottom area. So this has a really good, diverse habitat type on it. And it could be a really fantastic spot. Having looked at the map this way, it actually tells me that this string of islands here might be the first place to start. The other thing you could always use Google Earth to look at these lakes. It's kind of at the same level. The cool thing about Google Earth is you can use that to go back in time and look what the lake looked like on other years. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you catch more fish, and thanks for watching. This one's been caught about 50 times.